I'm Paul Tunner, CEO of View AI, a content AI startup. I love Steph's presentation. Completely agree with everything he said. This is about reimagining the way we work, not just about making things quicker. And that's what we're going to talk about on this panel, because if you're going to reimagine the way you work, you want to do that around the evolving customer needs. Because I've worked in this industry for 25 years. I know I don't look that old. You're very kind. But I've worked in this industry for 25 years and I've seen HCP and patient needs change so dramatically. And we have to be responsive and reactive to that. So we're going to talk about that. And to set the scene, I'm going to hand over to Derek, first of all, to show us some data exactly about HCP needs are evolving. And we're then going to chat through what that means. Derek, over to you.
Thanks, Paul. Hi, everyone. I'm Derek. So in the last 12 years, I've been pioneering field next best action as part of Extana. And Extana got acquired by PharmaForce IQ earlier this year. And so I've been expanding my focus to thinking about how HCP preferences have been changing. And so we do want to share today a couple of stats on how that really highlight how that's evolved. But I would say that just because of my lessons, through what I've done, it's really all about the individual behind the stats. So as we start thinking about how HCPs are changing, we're going to dive into that. So first stat I think that we're probably all pretty familiar with is the stat from ChatGPT earlier this year, which is 320 million health queries occur on ChatGPT every single week. But behind that, what's happening with the physicians where patients are visiting them?
Half my patients come in quoting AI now, so I'm using it too, just to keep up.
And I think that what that means, as we hear, is that physicians are now using AI. 75% of European physicians are using it for medical reasons, and 4 in 5 are looking there for answers before they actually talk to a rep or an MSL. And I think 54% even prefer it.
When a tricky trial question hits at midnight, I don't text my MSL anymore. I ask AI. Honestly, that's my first stop now.
And I think it's not just about actually how physicians are engaging. It's actually also about who they actually are. Something like there's turnover, like 1 in 5 HCPs is new when you're looking across each HCP at a hospital.
Honestly, I'm the third doctor in this role in 5 years. Reps keep building relationships with people who've already left.
And when we look at who we even talk to and who we need to target, that's changing as well. 25% of primary care visits now are managed by nurse practitioners in the US.
I manage over 2,000 primary care patients, but honestly, I've never had a single pharma rep visit.
And I think the last thing we need to recognize is in the EU, people coming from everywhere. I think, 60% of doctors are trained in another country. So with all that in play, I think we all need to know and we remember that while we think about targeting segments, really it's not about the segment. It's about the individuals inside the segment. And so we are looking now at figuring out how can we optimize for each physician and their specific journey. And I think that maybe sets us up for what I think we need to talk about today.
Yeah, exactly. And before we dive in, maybe just a quick nod to Aziza, who was supposed to be on this panel. Sadly, due to travel difficulties, couldn't be here. But I know in the prep call, she raised some really important points about cultural differences with doctors and, thinking more about that aspect as well as everything else. I just wanted to give a nod to that. It's a real shame that she can't be here. So, Derek, you've raised some important points there, some interesting data, and it just makes me think that 10 years ago, we were talking about Dr. Google and the problems that Dr. Google was talking. Now it's Dr. ChatGPT causing problems for our HCPs. So things are really changing. So I'm going to ask David, let me start with you. Do a quick introduction to yourself. And I'd love to hear your thoughts and reflections on how those needs are changing.
Sure. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I work at Novartis in customer strategy. As a disclaimer, the views are my own here. And so how are customer needs changing, right? And beyond that, in a world where, and thanks to AI, information is commoditizing. And we're not, even as smart as we are, going to win against that. Right? No strategy will win against the internet. It's just too powerful. So as a customer strategy person, I ask myself, how do I stay relevant in that change? Do I keep fighting a dying game or I pivot? And I think that we have to pivot and be more in the hospital, support more the clinical practice, reduce the frictions, because at the end of the day, that's where science happens. It's doctors delivering drugs to patients. So that's the way I'm positioning myself today.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Barbara, same thing to you. I mean, you give a bit of an introduction, but how are you most seeing HCP needs change right now?
Sure. So first of all, thank you for the question. But just about myself, I am actually working really at the crossroad of strategy and business innovation. So it's really bringing those both parts together. And what I'm seeing is that we are actually in a big gap. To me, physicians are behaving exactly like we are behaving right now. We are looking for a very quick answer, and the very quick answer is actually. It's either Google probably 10 years ago, but nowadays it's ChatGPT, it is Claude, whatever it is. But that's how they get their access to the information. And that's actually, in my opinion, what we are competing against, if I may say. And I'm not sure we can win that competition by increasing share of voice or whatsoever. So I think we really have to change the way we look at it and really understand how we actually add value to physician. And because I think that's deeply rooted what and how we need to change is how do we add value. And I am not sure by adding value we mean actually going for any better content or for actually a different channel, etc. It's really about how we can help them and really understand what their problems really are.
Yeah, completely agree. And that it's interesting you use that term share of voice, because I used to hear that term used a lot, and it was more in the context of competitive landscape. But it really is now share of voice. How do we compete with the AI engines? And my worry for the industry is if we just keep doing what we're doing, but we do it quicker, cheaper, faster, we're not going to win. I think we need to change the way we do things.
Totally aligned.
So, Derek, I'm going to come back to you. You know, what does this mean in terms of engagement models? How radical do we need to be?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And when I think about share of voice, I mean, share of voice has evolved for the digital era. Clicks, impressions, and it moved from reach and frequency. But I think it needs to shift again. And I think about it now as share of answer. Because ultimately, if our brand message is not in the answer, then where does it exist? And so there's different ways you can optimize for that. We're starting to work with early adopters on thinking about a three-pronged approach to try to get that share of answer optimized. It's looking at, of course, your websites and how do you do AEO, answer engine optimization, rather than SEO. I think it's also about then going in and understanding if you are targeting paid media ads, how do you make sure you offer that as well where physicians are going? And I think most important is how do you hyper target so you don't you don't just treat them all as one engine, but you think about for each HCP, where are they going? So you don't spend too much because it's a very expensive channel.
Yep.
And I think the last thing is just whether or not you're actually able to influence the answer itself by giving context to the answer engine.
Yeah, I think that's actually, if you ask me, the key question right now. It's not necessarily about what content am I going to deliver to that specific HCP, wherever it is, the behavior is and the segmentation is. It's really how do we actually make sure from a data stewardship perspective, how do we bring the right data in the right format to those AI's platforms? So basically when physicians are looking for the information, they're getting the right information. And right now, I'm not sure we are actually looking enough at the data stewardship angle and the format, if I may say, angle for AI to be able to absorb and to give the most relevant answer to the physician exactly at the moment they need it.
So there's maybe, I would look at this, there's maybe three dimensions to this. One is take something like websites, and you've mentioned GEO and AEO. How do we optimize those to make sure they're providing the right information, not just for people, but for AI? The second dimension is what other channels should we maybe be using that we're not using to tackle that? And the third dimension is things like field force, perhaps some of those non-digital channels. What does it mean for them? I know these are really big questions, but David, I'm interested to get your views to pick up on what you've heard. Where are we heading here?
And I think you said the key word on which we usually test and validate AI are outcomes, the quality of the outcome, the usefulness of the outcome. What about our outcome? Right? With the messaging, with the content, is it driving behavioral change? That's an outcome I want to see. Behavioral change at the hospital, in clinical practice. So going beyond simply delivering well a good message, but looking at the human impact, right? I think that's very important to go the next step. And yeah, I think that's something we have to do.
And to what degree, so you talk about behavior change there, to what degree are we looking at that kind of direct behavior change, which has always been the model, versus we're trying to maybe influence the AI bots, and then that information is driving are we running the risk of becoming one step removed there?
So I think we can influence through the content, of course, and we're getting better at it, and AI is here to support, but also helping change behaviors in the practice of medicine. So some companies use field technical specialists, a bit like the OpenAI now and Anthropic are using forward deployed engineers, right, to make a bit of a parallel with AI companies. So some pharma companies are doing field technical specialists where they go in the hospital and they look at how to improve the operations of the hospital to the benefit of the physician, but not only. They're also the nurses, also very important stakeholders, to impact positively the patients. And that's removing the frictions I mentioned about, and that's how you can scale the usage of your product. Because of course you have the prescription, that's almost day one, but scaling happens after prescription.
Yeah.
I would like to be a little bit controversial here. I mean, I love the behavioral changes, and I'm totally aligned with that. But I think what you described to me is also, how do we learn to add value? Because I think we have been extremely good at delivering the message, to delivering it at the right time, to deliver it the right message to the right person, etc., etc. But I'm not 100% convinced we have been actually really good at adding value. And in order to add value, and that's what you described, is really to understand what helps actually, whether it's the physician, whether it's the nurse, but it helps the overall functioning of the specific ecosystem, I would say.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably one of the areas and aspect we have to really change the way we're thinking and be more to be listening and to be understanding. And actually, we had a chit chat over coffee this morning. You have this wealth of prompts that are going every day and every week into whatever AI system. Wouldn't it be worth to really understand what those prompts are about, and really get those insights and really understand what the physician really wants?
Yeah.
I mean, you have some more expertise in that space, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think maybe we're getting to this question of, how do we measure, right? How do we know now in this new world what's working? How do we measure?
Yeah.
And so as we're thinking about that, I think that measurement of this share of answer becomes very different than what we used to measure before. We start asking ourselves, when someone's asking a question about a therapeutic area or category, is our brand mentioned? Like, how accurate is that? Because often it's not very accurate depending on which sources it was drawn from. And then also in a competitive mindset, how do we as a brand show up against the competitors favorably, unfavorably, accurately? And so all those questions have to start being thought about. And also we've got to measure it continuously, because it just changes every week with the way that models work, with the way that citations are. So it's very changing, this dynamic around this question.
And you're right, there's almost like a whole new set of KPIs coming in as we think about the AI bots.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'd also say, is there a risk that we lose the human connection in that process? So are we moving to a place where there's almost two sets of metrics? There's kind of how are we engaging with people, how are we engaging with the AI bots?
Yeah. So actually you're touching a good point here. Is I think the KPIs are really great to measure our performance and what we do and whether we do it great and so on and so forth. I think there's probably a set of metrics that need to be also targeted to the machine learning, etc. But I also believe that there's another set of measurements, which is the customer performance indicators. Because in my opinion, this is almost going to generate or to create the link and to the glue in between all those different metrics. Because right now we are measuring very well what we are doing. I think we have to improve on measuring what is happening in that entire new space.
Yeah.
But I think we also need to understand and measure how basically we satisfy the customers, not how we are doing in terms of our sales force, our different aspects.
Yeah, I completely agree.
To that point, right? Doctors are changing, patients are changing as well.
Okay.
And we have to work on that. Patients are better educated, or at least have more access to information. They come in front of the doctor with questions, sometimes even, almost that they want to be part of the decision, which is good in a way, right? If it's HCP-led, of course. So this is new for the doctor, and we need to address that. And I think through patient activation, on disease awareness campaigns, but also on the different technologies available for specific disease, you can help to, channel those patients toward not just having information, but having the right information.
Yeah.
And that will be the key, because otherwise you increase the burden towards the relationship between a patient and a doctor, and that's detrimental to the doctor.
Yeah, and there's probably a whole separate panel there.
Absolutely.
About,
It could be another panel.
patient impact, or what patient needs are versus HCP needs, and how we balance that responsibly. But given we've got a few minutes left, and I know people are probably getting quite hungry, we'll not veer too far down there at the moment. But I do just want to come back to this kind of balance between human engagement and AI engagement. Obviously, I think AI has enormous potential, but I don't want to lose that human piece. So I want to spend the last few minutes talking about what is it that we keep doing from what we've been doing to maintain that? What should we maybe stop doing? Because I think, I'm a big fan of, as we do new things, you can't just keep doing everything and add stuff in. What is maybe outdated at this point in time? Barbara, do you want to pick up on that? Or do you think everything we're doing is okay? We just keep, reimagining?
I think it's a good question. If you ask me just like that, what comes first to mind is really doing that push with that message, that content that we want to deliver to the physician or to the nurse, right? I think what we have to really stop doing is to delivering what the message we want. I think we have to start delivering what they need.
Yeah, I love that. I think that it takes me back actually to when I was first working on field next best action and the reps, the first deployment we did failed because we weren't taking into account what the rep needed and also what they wanted. And so I came up with this concept, the way I think about it is feel right. Like what feels right for the rep, what answers what they need at that moment. I think that's the same with everything when it comes to adoption of AI, and including physicians. What question do they have? Whether or not they put it in an answer engine or just they have it in their mind when they're having a conversation or searching, what's their question? And let's answer that. And I think that is really the human element of making it feel right for the physician.
Yeah. And David, anything you think we should stop doing?
Stop doing, I think, what I'm looking at is really how do we protect trust in that new world with AI, where what are the sources are going to be becoming increasingly important, not just what you've heard or what you think but where it comes from, and is that information usable? Can it translate? We're hearing translation, right? Before in other panels, into action, valuable action for doctors and patients, right? So really the full life cycle. And we not just have to have the credibility of the knowledge, of the medical knowledge, but we also need to make ourselves visible. And that's a complexity, I think, in our world where it's never been easier to say something or post something. How do you remain visible? Because being right and invisible is a real risk.
Yeah, completely agree. So the last minute or so, and let's create hopefully a talking point that people can take into lunch, something concrete they can take with them. I know it's a big topic. It's always much easier asking these questions and answering. But if there's one thing you say people should take away and say, take a look at this, start to rethink this, what would that element be within customer engagement? I see you nodding. Do you want to pick up on that?
I think for me, I've said it already. I think, how do you optimize for share of answer?
Yep. Share of answer. Barbara?
Yep. It's going to be about really looking into the governance, internal governance, and making sure the data stewardship is there to be able to basically give that share of answer.
Yeah.
And for me, it's to try to put yourself in the shoes of your customers. Doctors, before being doctors, are normal human beings, women and men. So try to understand what is their experience of leveraging AI tools, of engaging with those new channels of content. And then you will understand where you might have the chance to locate your own self in the future.
Yeah, and I would just sort of close things by, I think there's been quite a nice flow with the 2 sessions that came before ours and this one. It's almost like it's been planned, actually, where then, as was talking about, rather like we are, customer needs and evolving, really important. And then Steph was talking about reimagining the way we work, don't just make things quicker. And I feel like that's kind of where we've got to. And my plea for people here would be, keep that customer-centric view. Their needs are changing. You have to focus on that. But don't assume you can deliver against that doing what you're doing. You do need to make time to reimagine. And with that reimagination, we can take it into lunch. I will thank our panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.